The security footage didn't lie. Marcus Ashford watched his entire empire crumble in the 47 seconds it took for the truth to play across the boardroom screen. The maid he destroyed wasn't a thief, she was the only person who could have saved him. And now, as federal agents surrounded his building, he realized his mistake hadn't just cost him everything. It had killed him. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. The vacuum cleaner hummed against the silence of the 52nd floor. 3 a.m. in Manhattan, and Naomi Williams moved through Marcus Ashford's corner office like a ghost, dusting the awards he never looked at, straightening the files he'd never read, polishing the windows that framed his empire of glass and steel. She'd been cleaning this office for 3 years. In that time, Marcus Ashford had looked directly at her exactly 4 times. Once when she'd accidentally knocked over his coffee. 3 times when he'd needed her to move so he could reach something behind her. Never to say hello, never to learn her name. Naomi didn't mind the invisibility anymore. Being unseen meant she heard things, saw things, understood things that the billionaire CEO of Ashford Global Industries couldn't imagine his cleaning lady would comprehend. Tonight she understood too much. It started with the file folder. She'd been emptying his trash when she noticed it wedged behind the recycling bin, one of those accordion folders lawyers use, thick with documents. She wouldn't have looked twice, except for the label, ASHFORD Termination Protocol. Naomi's hand stilled. She glanced at the closed door, then at the security camera in the corner. She knew its blind spot. She'd been cleaning this office long enough to know where every camera could and couldn't see. 30 seconds, that's all she had. The folder was heavy. Inside she found contracts, wire transfer receipts, emails, and a legal brief that made her blood run cold. It was a corporate coup meticulously planned. Marcus Ashford's own board members, his CFO, his head of legal people whose children he'd held at company picnics, were systematically embezzling funds, cooking the books, and preparing to frame him for securities fraud. The takeover was scheduled for Friday, 3 days from now. "My God," Naomi whispered. She photographed 10 pages with her phone before voices in the hallway made her shove everything back into the folder and return it behind the bin. Her heart hammered as she grabbed the vacuum and moved to the far side of the room, trying to look casual, invisible, normal. The voices passed by. Naomi exhaled. She should walk away. She should finish her shift, go home to her studio apartment in Queens, and forget she'd ever seen anything. Marcus Ashford had never done a single kind thing for her. He paid her minimum wage through a contracting company that skimmed half her earnings. He'd cut the cleaning staff's hours last Christmas to increase executive bonuses. He represented everything wrong with men like him. Wealthy, powerful, convinced the world existed to serve them. But Naomi had been raised by a woman who believed in doing what's right even when it cost you. Especially when it cost you. She finished her shift, took the elevator down 52 floors in silence, rode the subway home as dawn broke over the city, and sat at her kitchen table, staring at those photographs on her phone, trying to decide if saving a man who'd never seen her was worth the risk of him crushing her for trying. By noon she'd made her choice. The next evening Naomi arrived 2 hours early for her shift. She'd rehearsed what she'd say 100 times. She wore her best church clothes under her cleaning uniform, a navy blue dress that had cost her a week's worth of groceries, sensible heels instead of her usual sneakers. She needed him to see her, really see her. Marcus Ashford's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer who'd always treated Naomi with barely concealed contempt, looked up from her desk as Naomi approached. "You're early," Jennifer said. "Cleaning doesn't start until 9. "I need to speak with Mr. Ashford." Naomi's voice was steady. "It's urgent." Jennifer's laugh was short and dismissive. "Mr. Ashford doesn't take meetings with cleaning staff. Submit any concerns through your supervisor." "This isn't about cleaning, it's about his company, his safety. Please, just 5 minutes." Something in Naomi's tone made Jennifer pause. She studied Naomi for a long moment, then sighed. "Wait here." Naomi waited. The seconds stretched into minutes. Other executives passed by, their eyes sliding over her like she was furniture. She counted ceiling tiles, straightened her dress, prayed. Jennifer returned, her expression apologetic in a way that told Naomi everything before she spoke. Mr. Ashford is in meetings until 8. He suggests you schedule an appointment through proper channels if you have a workplace grievance. I don't have a grievance. I have information he needs to. Ma'am, Jennifer's voice hardened. Mr. Ashford has 15 minutes between calls today. He's preparing for the biggest acquisition of his career. Whatever you think is urgent, I promise you, it's not more important than what he's handling. Now please, either begin your shift or leave. Naomi felt something crack inside her chest. She'd tried. She'd done what was right. She'd risked her job, her safety, her invisibility to warn a man who couldn't spare 5 minutes to listen. Fine, she said quietly. Thank you for your time. She turned to leave, and that's when she saw Victoria Chen. Victoria was Marcus's girlfriend, or mistress, or partner. The relationship had always been ambiguous, and his vice president of strategic development. She was beautiful in the way of people who could afford to be, with glossy black hair and designer suits that cost more than Naomi's annual salary. She was also, according to the documents Naomi had found, one of the primary architects of Marcus's destruction. Victoria stood in the hallway, pretending to review something on her phone, but her eyes were locked on Naomi, calculating, predatory. When Naomi passed her, Victoria smiled. Long day, she asked pleasantly. Naomi didn't answer, but she felt Victoria's eyes following her all the way to the service elevator, and she knew, with the certainty of someone who'd spent a lifetime being underestimated, that she just made a terrible mistake. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Naomi discovered it at the end of her shift, when she went to retrieve her street clothes from her locker in the janitorial staff room. The locker door was ajar. Inside, tucked between her spare uniform and her lunch bag, was a manila envelope. She knew better than to touch it, but she also knew it didn't matter. The damage was already done. Naomi Williams. 2 security guards stood in the doorway. Behind them, Victoria Chen watched with an expression of theatrical sympathy. I'm sorry, Victoria said softly, but we need you to come with us. There's been a situation. They took her to a windowless office on the 48th floor. Marcus Ashford was already there, standing with his back to the door, staring at the city lights below. He didn't turn when she entered. On the table between them lay the manila envelope. Someone had opened it. Inside were documents, financial records, passwords, client lists, confidential information that was unquestionably stolen. Do you know what this is? Marcus asked, still not looking at her. No, sir, I've never seen. It was found in your locker. Now he turned. His eyes were flat, cold, the eyes of a man who'd built an empire by destroying anyone who threatened it. You've been stealing from my company, selling corporate secrets. Did you think you wouldn't get caught? Mr. Ashford, please, I didn't. Save it. His voice cut like glass. I've seen this before. People think because they're invisible they're safe. They think because I don't notice them I can't hurt them. Naomi felt something inside her go very still. She thought about the evidence on her phone, the photographs of the conspiracy against him, the proof that the people he trusted were destroying him while he accused her of betrayal. She could show him, right now. She could pull out her phone and prove her innocence and save him from the trap closing around him. But as she looked into his eyes, at the contempt, the certainty, the absolute refusal to see her as anything but what he decided she was, something shifted in her. A lifetime of being invisible, of being dismissed, of trying to help people who'd never once helped her. You're right, she said quietly. You don't notice me, you never have, and that's going to cost you everything. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe even concern, but Victoria stepped forward, her hand on his arm, and the moment passed. Should I call the police? Victoria asked. No, Marcus turned away again. Just get her out of my building. Make sure she signs the NDA. If she talks about this to anyone, media, competitors, anyone, we'll sue her into bankruptcy. Naomi looked at Victoria. The other woman smiled, a small, victorious curve of red lips. Come on, Victoria said, almost kindly. Let's get you processed out. sign a few papers, and then you can go home and forget this ever happened. 2 hours later, Naomi Williams stood on the sidewalk outside Ashford Global Industries with a cardboard box containing 3 years of personal items: a coffee mug, a photo of her mother, a sweater she kept for cold nights. She'd signed papers she hadn't read, escorted by lawyers who treated her like a criminal. She'd been fingerprinted, photographed, documented. And she'd kept her phone in her pocket, with 10 photographs that could have saved Marcus Ashford's life. But wouldn't. The subway home was nearly empty at midnight. Naomi sat in the harsh fluorescent light, the cardboard box on her lap, and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not fear about how she'd pay rent or find another job with a termination on her record, just a vast, oceanic numbness. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. If you know what's good for you, you'll delete everything and forget you were ever there. This is your only warning. Victoria, it had to be. Somehow she knew about the photographs. Naomi stared at the message for a long moment. Then she opened a new note on her phone and began to type everything she remembered from those documents. Names, dates, dollar amounts, the structure of the conspiracy, every detail her photographic memory had captured. When she'd finished, she uploaded everything: the photos, her notes, time-stamped records of her attempts to warn Marcus, to 3 separate cloud accounts. One under her name, one under her mother's, one under a dummy account she'd created years ago for online shopping. Then she went home, made tea she didn't drink, and sat by her window watching the city lights until dawn. The first call came at 6 a.m. "Miss Williams, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the NYPD Economic Crimes Unit. We'd like to ask you some questions about your former employment with Ashford Global Industries." Naomi's hand tightened on the phone. "About what?" "There's been an allegation of corporate espionage. We understand you were terminated yesterday for stealing confidential documents. We'd like to get your statement. Can you come down to the precinct this morning?" "Am I under arrest?" "No, ma'am. We're just gathering information at this point, but cooperation would be in your best interest." Naomi closed her eyes. They were covering their bases, documenting her as the thief in case anything went wrong with their plan, building a paper trail that pointed away from themselves. "I'll come in this afternoon," she said. "I need to speak with a lawyer first." She couldn't afford a lawyer, but they didn't know that. After she hung up, Naomi sat very still, thinking. Then she opened her laptop and began to research the members of Ashford Global's board of directors, their backgrounds, their financial troubles, their connections to each other and to Victoria Chen. A pattern emerged. 3 board members were in serious financial distress: gambling debts, messy divorces, failed investments. The CFO had been passed over for CEO twice when Marcus had been promoted over him. The head of legal had lost a wrongful termination suit 2 years ago and barely kept her job. They all had reasons to want Marcus gone. Victoria had given them the means. Naomi made a list. Then she started making phone calls. The offices of the Securities and Exchange Commission are not designed to comfort. Naomi sat in a gray interview room across from 2 investigators whose expressions gave nothing away, and told them everything. She showed them the photographs, the timeline, her employment records proving she'd worked late the night she found the documents, security footage requests showing she'd tried to meet with Marcus, text records of Victoria's threat. "Why didn't you take this to Mr. Ashford directly?" the first investigator asked. "I tried. His assistant wouldn't let me see him, and when I was accused of theft, he didn't give me a chance to explain. He'd already decided what I was." The second investigator leaned forward. "Miss Williams, these are serious allegations. If you're making this up to retaliate for being fired." "Why would I make this up?" Naomi met her eyes steadily. "What do I gain? I'm a cleaning lady who just lost her job and her reputation. I'm here because what they're doing is wrong, and because Marcus Ashford, for all his faults, doesn't deserve to go to prison for crimes he didn't commit." The investigators exchanged glances. Then the first one said, "We'll need to verify everything you've told us. That could take weeks. In the meantime, don't contact anyone at Ashford Global. Don't discuss this investigation. And don't leave the state." "Am I a suspect?" "You're a witness for now." Naomi left the building feeling lighter. She'd done what she could. The rest was out of her hands. She was wrong. The call came 2 days later, Friday morning, the day the coup was supposed to happen. Naomi Williams. The voice was male, young, panicked. "This is James Chen. I'm Mr. Ashford's assistant. Well, I was. They fired Jennifer yesterday and I just started, and I found your number in the old files and I don't know who else to call." Naomi's heart stuttered. What happened? "Mr. Ashford's been arrested. The FBI raided the offices this morning. They're saying he embezzled $300 million. Everyone's turning on him. Victoria, the board, everyone. And he keeps asking for his lawyer, but Victoria already fired the entire legal department and hired new counsel who's telling him to take a plea deal." "Where is he now?" "Federal holding. They denied bail. Miss Williams, I've only worked here 3 days, but I've been going through the files and something's wrong. The evidence they're using against him, the wire transfers, the offshore accounts, none of it existed before this week. It's like someone planted it all at once." "That's because someone did," Naomi said quietly. "Listen carefully. I need you to do exactly what I say." She gave him instructions. Contact information for the SEC investigators. Where to find the backup security footage from the night she discovered the documents. The names of the board members who were part of the conspiracy. "Why are you helping him?" James asked. "After what he did to you?" Naomi looked out her window at the city that never stopped moving, never stopped consuming, never stopped deciding who mattered and who didn't. "Because I'm not doing this for him," she said. "I'm doing it because it's right, and because someone has to prove that people like me, people like you, aren't invisible. We see everything, and sometimes we're the only ones who can fix what the powerful break." She hung up and waited. The news broke in real time. Naomi watched from a coffee shop in Queens as every major financial network covered the fall of Marcus Ashford, the disgraced billionaire, the corporate thief, the man who'd stolen from his own company and lived like a king while planning his exit strategy. Except the narrative was already crumbling. By noon, 3 board members had resigned. By 2 p.m., the SEC had frozen Victoria Chen's personal accounts. By 4 p.m., someone had leaked internal emails showing the conspiracy in detail, emails Naomi had never seen, which meant someone inside Ashford Global was working against Victoria. James, it had to be. Her phone rang at 6 p.m. "Miss Williams." The voice was unfamiliar. "My name is Robert Kaplan. I'm a federal prosecutor. I understand you filed a report with the SEC regarding Ashford Global Industries." "Yes. Your information has been extremely helpful. We're moving forward with charges against Victoria Chen and 4 board members for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy. However, we have a problem." Naomi's grip tightened on her phone. "What problem?" "Marcus Ashford. The evidence against him is circumstantial, but his own former employees are testifying that he gave the orders for the embezzlement. Without proof otherwise, we may have to charge him as a co-conspirator." "That's ridiculous," they framed him. "I believe you, but belief isn't evidence. What we need is someone who can testify to Mr. Ashford's character, someone who knew him well enough to state definitively that he wasn't involved, someone credible." Naomi laughed, a short, bitter sound. "And you think that's me, the cleaning lady he fired for theft, the woman he had escorted out by security? I think you're the woman who tried to save him when everyone else was destroying him. I think you're credible precisely because you have nothing to gain from helping him. And I think you're the only witness we have who isn't compromised by financial interest or personal loyalty. I won't lie for him. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to tell the truth, all of it, what you saw, what you know, what kind of man he really is, for better or worse." Naomi was quiet for a long moment. "I'll testify," she said finally, "but I want to see him first, before the trial. I want to talk to him in person." "That's irregular." "That's my condition." A pause, then, "I'll see what I can do." The federal holding facility smelled like disinfectant and despair. Naomi sat in the visitor's room, her hands folded on the metal table, and waited. When they brought Marcus Ashford in, she barely recognized him. The billionaire was gone. In his place was a man in an orange jumpsuit, his face gray and drawn, his hands shaking slightly as he sat down across from her. He stared at her for a long moment, confusion and recognition warring in his expression. "You," he said finally, "you're the maid, the one I fired." "Naomi Williams," she said. "We never met. Officially, I cleaned your office for 3 years, but you never asked my name." He flinched. "Why are you here?" His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming or crying or both. "To gloat. You have every right. I destroyed your life over a lie." "I'm here because I'm going to testify at your trial. The prosecutor wants me to vouch for your character, to say you're not the kind of man who'd embezzle from his own company." Marcus laughed, a broken sound. "Don't. I'm exactly that kind of man. I've done terrible things to get where I am. I've destroyed people's lives for profit. I've chosen money over morality every single time. Whatever they're accusing me of, I probably deserve it." "But you didn't do this," Naomi said quietly. "This specific crime, you didn't commit it." "How do you know?" "Because I found the evidence 3 days before it happened. I tried to warn you, and you fired me instead of listening." His eyes widened. "The night you came to my office, you weren't trying to steal, you were trying to save you, yes." He dropped his head into his hands. For a moment he just sat there, breathing hard, trembling. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you save me? I was never anything but cruel to you. I didn't see you. I didn't value you. I treated you like you were nothing." "I know. So why?" Naomi was quiet for a moment, thinking about her mother. About the lessons she'd learned growing up poor and black in a city that treated people like her as invisible. About the choice between being the person the world expected her to be and the person she chose to become. "Because doing what's right isn't about whether people deserve it," she said. "It's about who you are when no one's watching, when there's no reward, when the person you're saving would never do the same for you." She leaned forward. "I didn't save you because you're a good man, Mr. Ashford. I saved you because I am a good person. There's a difference." He stared at her, and she saw the exact moment he finally, truly saw her. Not as the maid, not as the invisible woman who cleaned his office, but as a human being who'd made a choice that shamed every choice he'd ever made. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice broke. "God, I'm so sorry for what I did to you, for what I said, for who I've been." "Your apology doesn't undo the damage, but it's a start." She stood. "I'll testify, I'll tell them what I know, but when this is over, if you get out of here, you need to do better, be better. Because the world doesn't need more men like who you were. It needs men like who you could become." She turned to leave. "Naomi," her name on his lips stopped her. "Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving." "I didn't save you because I saw something in you," she said without turning around. "I saved you because of what I see in myself. Remember that." The door closed behind her, and Marcus Ashford sat alone in the visiting room, finally understanding the difference between being powerful and being good. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Naomi testified on day 4, laying out everything she discovered in meticulous detail. The defense attorneys tried to paint her as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, but her evidence was ironclad. Photographs, timestamps, security footage, documentation of her attempts to warn Marcus and the retaliation that followed. When Victoria Chen's lawyer suggested Naomi had fabricated the evidence, Naomi pulled out her ace, the testimony of James Chen, the assistant who'd found additional documents proving the conspiracy. Emails Victoria had forgotten to delete, wire transfer records with her digital signature, a paper trail that led directly to her. Victoria was arrested in the courtroom. So were 2 board members who'd been sitting in the gallery, thinking they were safe. The trial shifted. Marcus went from co-conspirator to victim. The charges against him were dropped, though the prosecutor made it clear he wasn't innocent of everything, just this specific crime. But when the trial ended, Marcus Ashford had nothing left. His company had been seized, broken apart, sold to competitors. His assets were frozen pending civil suits from investors. His reputation was destroyed. The man who'd built an empire from nothing had nothing again. And Naomi Williams, the woman he'd fired, was the only person who'd shown up to the courthouse on the day of his release. They sat on a bench outside the courthouse, watching traffic flow by. Two people from completely different worlds who'd collided in the worst possible way and somehow ended up here. "What will you do now?" Naomi asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit had been replaced with a borrowed outfit from the public defender's office. He looked smaller somehow, more human. "I don't know," he admitted. "Everything I built is gone. I have no company, no wealth, no reputation. I'm 53 years old and starting over from scratch." He glanced at her. "What about you?" "I have an apartment in Queens. Some savings. I've been doing freelance bookkeeping while the trial was happening. It's not much, but it's honest." "Bookkeeping?" He smiled slightly. "You're overqualified." "I'm exactly qualified. I have a degree in accounting from City College. Graduated summa cum laude. But no one wants to hire a black woman for anything but cleaning jobs when they look at my resume." He absorbed that, and she saw the shame cross his face. The recognition of all the ways the world, and men like him, had limited her. "I want to start something new," he said slowly. "Not a corporation, something smaller, more ethical. A consulting firm maybe, helping small businesses build sustainable practices. Teaching them to do what I didn't, value people over profit." "That's ambitious for a man with no money." "I have some investments they couldn't touch, enough to start small." He turned to face her fully. "I want you to be my partner, equal shares, equal say. You handle the books and the ethics. I handle the client relationships and strategy. We build something that actually does good." Naomi studied him, searching for manipulation or condescension. She found neither. Just a man who'd lost everything and somehow found something he'd never had before: humility. "Why would I agree to that?" "Because you're brilliant and you deserve better than scraping by on freelance work. Because I can open doors you can't, but you can keep me honest in ways I can't do myself. Because," he paused, "because you saved my life when you had every reason not to. And I want to spend whatever time I have left proving you didn't waste that mercy on someone who won't change." "I don't need your charity, Mr. Ashford." "It's not charity, it's restitution, it's partnership, it's," he smiled, sad and real, "it's me finally seeing you, really seeing you, and asking if you'll let me try to become someone worthy of that second chance you gave me." Naomi was quiet for a long time. She thought about her mother, who'd died cleaning houses for people who never learned her name. She thought about every job application she'd submitted to positions she was qualified for, only to be offered custodial work instead. She thought about being invisible her whole life, and the strange power that invisibility had given her. 60-40, she said finally, "in my favor, and I make all final decisions about who we work with and how we treat employees. You get veto power on strategy, but I get final say on ethics. And we hire people like me, people society overlooks. People who are invisible, we make them visible." Marcus extended his hand. "Deal." She shook it. His grip was firm but not domineering. "Equal." "One more thing," Naomi said. "You're going to write recommendation letters for every person who worked in janitorial services at Ashford Global, glowing recommendations. And you're going to personally call employers to vouch for them when they job hunt. You're going to use whatever credibility you have left to open doors for people you never saw before." "I'll do it gladly." "And you're going to fund scholarships for kids from Queens, from the Bronx, from communities like mine. Full rides to business school. Because you know what kind of brilliance gets wasted when people can't afford education." "Yes, absolutely yes." Naomi stood. "Then we have a deal, Mr. Ashford, but understand this. I'm not doing this to save you again. I'm doing this to prove something to every person who's ever been invisible. We're not just here to clean up your messes. We're here to run the world you took from us. And we're going to do it better than you ever did." Marcus stood too, and for the first time in his life, looked up at someone he'd once looked down on. "I believe you," he said, "and I can't wait to see it." 6 months later. The office was small, just 3 rooms in a renovated building in Brooklyn. But the sign on the door read, "Williams and Ashford, Ethical Business Consulting." Naomi's name came first. That had been Marcus's idea. They had 6 clients, all small businesses, owned by immigrants, women, people of color, the entrepreneurs the big consulting firms ignored. Williams and Ashford charged on a sliding scale, with some clients paying in kind or nothing at all if they couldn't afford services. It wasn't glamorous. It would never make them rich. But every client they helped stay in business was a small victory against the system that had tried to destroy them both. Marcus arrived early one morning to find Naomi already at her desk, reviewing financial statements for a Dominican restaurant owner who was 3 months behind on rent. "You're here early," he said. "Mrs. Rodriguez's son is sick. If she loses the restaurant, she loses her health insurance. I'm trying to find a way to restructure her debt that keeps her in business." Marcus nodded. He'd learned not to interrupt when Naomi was working. Instead, he made coffee, proper coffee, not the cheap instant he used to ignore while his assistant made it, and set a cup on her desk. "Thank you," she said, not looking up. An hour later, she sat back, satisfied. Got it. If she shifts her supplier and renegotiates her lease term, she can stay solvent and pay down the debt over 18 months. It'll be tight, but doable. "You're brilliant at this." "I always was, you just never noticed." He couldn't argue with that. The phone rang. Naomi answered, listened, and smiled, a real smile that transformed her whole face. "That's wonderful news. Congratulations, Mr. Chen." When she hung up, Marcus raised an eyebrow. "James Chen," she explained. "He just got accepted to Columbia Business School, full scholarship." "The one we wrote the recommendation for." "The one you wrote. I just told you what to say." Marcus felt something warm in his chest. Pride, maybe, or purpose. Things he'd thought he'd had before but never really understood until now. "We're doing good work," he said. "We're doing the bare minimum," Naomi corrected. "But it's a start." She was right. It was just a start. But sometimes that's all you need. A chance to begin again, to do better, to prove that being invisible doesn't mean being powerless. And sometimes, the people the world overlooks are exactly the ones who change it. Can you imagine? Being fired for trying to save someone's life. Being treated like a criminal for doing the right thing. That's what happened to Naomi Williams, and it happens to good people every single day. People who work hard, who stay invisible, who do everything they're supposed to do and still get thrown away like they're nothing. But here's what makes this story so powerful. Naomi didn't let Marcus Ashford's cruelty turn her into someone cruel. She didn't let his blindness make her bitter. She stayed true to who she was, even when it cost her everything. And in the end, it was her integrity, not his wealth, not his power, not his connections, that saved them both. This story reminds us that the people society overlooks are often the people who hold all the power. The invisible ones. The cleaning staff, the janitors, the service workers who see everything because no one thinks they're worth noticing. They're not just here to serve. They're here to lead, to teach, to show us what real strength looks like. If this story made you angry at the injustice Naomi faced, if it made you think about the people in your own life who you might be overlooking, if it gave you hope that doing the right thing still matters even when it costs you everything, I need you to do something for me right now. First, hit that like button. Smash it. Because every like tells YouTube that stories like Naomi's matter, that justice stories matter, that the invisible people deserve to be seen. Second, drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever been invisible? Have you ever tried to do the right thing and been punished for it? Or maybe you've been a Marcus Ashford, someone who didn't see the good people right in front of you. Tell me your story. Share where you're watching from. Say justice served if you believe Naomi got the ending she deserved. I read every single comment, and your story might be the next one we tell. Third, and this is the most important part, subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got more stories coming. Stories about justice. Stories about redemption. Stories about people who fought back against systems designed to crush them and won. Stories that will make you angry, make you cry, make you believe that one person really can change the world. Don't miss the next one. Don't let YouTube hide these stories from you. Subscribe now. And if you know someone who needs to hear Naomi's story, someone who's been invisible, someone who's been fired unjustly, someone who's trying to do the right thing in a world that punishes them for it, share this video. Send it to them. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know their story matters. Let them know that being overlooked doesn't mean being powerless. Thank you for being here. Thank you for seeing these stories, for caring about justice, for believing that people like Naomi Williams deserve to be celebrated, not erased. Now go ahead and hit that like button, drop that comment, subscribe, and join this movement of people who refuse to be invisible anymore. I'll see you in the next story, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Justice is coming, and it starts with you.